So I'm not the hugest fan of what you would call react content, but I watched a piece from Eliza Schlesinger's new comedy special, and I thought we could take a look together because I have some thoughts.
There is an anger toward women in our world, in our country. You can see it with the current legislation that's being written. However, I wrote this joke before all this happened. Lucky for me, hating women is evergreen, and so these jokes still work. But there is an anger toward women when they don't give attention, a sexual experience, love, admiration, a conversation to an absolute stranger. And there can be deadly consequences for it. And that's not her fault, but this is what happens. Now is the portion where I bring it down in order to bring it back up, but here we go. That kid that shot up the University of Santa Barbara a couple years ago, I know, it is hard to keep them straight, America, but this one was different.
It is happening a lot,
because this kid
right?
wrote a whole manifesto about how women don't pay attention to him and don't sleep with him, and this is what they deserve. That guy that shot up that Asian strip mall in Atlanta, he had a whole interview about how women don't sleep with him, and he's alone, and this is what they deserve. So now, this next part, I'm going to be as clear as possible because this is a Netflix special. So what I say next will be translated into hundreds of languages, and I want to be succinct, and I want to be loud, and I want to be clear. So here we go.
Let's go.
Gentlemen, if you are not having sex, and we're not talking a dry spell, we're not talking you're a little shy, we're not talking your Aunt Sheila did a number on me, I gotta take a knee. We're not talking you swiped right, she had a tail, you didn't know it till the awesome blossom came. We are talking if you don't have sex, and the narrative of your life is that you are not having sex because women are bitches, women are whores, you're a nice guy and you deserve better. That is nature's way of saying you should not be having sex, for you failed to adapt and evolve, and there should be no more of your kind.
Cheers, right?
If you can't figure it out. And I understand women cheer for that, most men do, some men are reserved. I get it, I'm a girl, I'm not one of you. And you don't know, you're like, I don't want to cheer for that. That means I'm leaving behind, it's bros before hoes, I'm leaving behind my guys. I can't do that. Yes, leave them. Leave the diseased portion of your herd that is broken. They're giving you a bad name. We believe you are good. Come with us for snacks and sex and good-looking babies. And gentlemen, if it still makes you uncomfortable, I totally get it. It might make you more comfortable to know that I stole that entire idea from a man named Charles Darwin. You can Wikipedia it, okay?
Okay. So this I thought was hilarious because I said something pretty similar recently, why the dating crisis is just natural selection. But I have a couple of thoughts about this that I want to share. I said, hey, look, the dating crisis is maybe natural selection. Eliza Schlesinger says the same thing. Hilarious, okay? And please don't hate on her. I think she's a comedian. I think she's just speaking what she understands. But I think there are a couple of fundamental problems here that we have to talk about. So she's advocating, and I don't know how true this is. I don't know how much of this is a joke, but I think there are a lot of people out there who have this attitude of screw incels, just fuck them. If people don't know how to date, it's adapt or die. You guys don't know, like even the bros, like don't help them out, right? Just leave them behind. And that's something that I kind of take issue with. And I'm sure that, you know, one of the problems with a comedy special is that she may have a more nuanced perspective. She may have a more nuanced take. This is a 2.5-minute clip from a special, which she has to, by virtue of the nature of it, I'm sure it's more complicated than that in her mind. So let's give her the benefit of the doubt. But I think that the reason that this joke is so important is because she says it and everyone starts clapping. Right? And then she advocates for leaving these people behind. And that's kind of what I have an issue with. So we as human beings have natural selection all around us, right? So people are born with cystic fibrosis, which is literally nature's way of saying, hey, like this is a gene that needs to be removed from the gene pool. It's not really compatible with life, but we don't leave those people behind. And then you can say like, okay, but that's different from like incel types, right? Because cystic fibrosis is something that you're born with. It's not your fault. It's not your choice. But then I also had a patient who was at the age of 21, got really drunk at a frat party, jumped off of a third-floor balcony, broke his back, and was quadriplegic for the rest of his life. That also is natural selection acting. right? So this person made a choice. They made a choice to drink too much alcohol, number one. They made a choice to jump off of a 3-story balcony. This was a choice that they made. That's the difference. Incels, they choose to be this way. These are their choices. But when it comes to that person, we don't let that person die, which, by the way, I think is the right thing to do. And then there are other versions of this as well. If we look at other people with addictions, so people who share needles and get HIV, that's a choice that they make. Should we let them die? Or people who are in abusive relationships and end up deciding, making the choice to date someone who is physically abusive to them. And if their life is threatened, they're making choices, right? These are their choices. Should we let them die? Should we leave them behind? Absolutely not. And this, I think, is the crux of the problem with like incels that we see today, which is that there is one group of people who does not deserve help from the rest of humanity. That's the problem, right? When it comes to everyone else, if you make a dumb choice to date the wrong person and you get physically abused, we're on your side. We should step up as a society to help domestic violence victims. I completely agree. If you're a drug addict, this is something that we used to be moralistic about, but now we understand that there is a developmental history to addiction. There are genetic predispositions to addiction. There are all kinds of choices that people make, but there are also circumstances and risk factors and histories of trauma that predispose people to addiction. So those people deserve our help too. What about the incels? So this is where my experience as a psychiatrist, I think that a lot of incels have a modern version of body dysmorphia. So if you look at a lot of incels, they'll be hyper focused on certain physical features. Like they'll say, my jawline is like this, therefore I can't get laid. I'm too short, therefore I can't get laid. They have a history of oftentimes traumatic experiences. They struggle with all kinds of pornography problems and other kinds of addictive problems. I think the developmental histories of incels show that they don't have easy lives. But this is the one group of people that we kind of say, fuck them. If y'all want to dive deep into the most important topics for our community, check out HG memberships. So the first thing to understand is that there needs to be no outcome from small talk. This is a Vasana too. Your mind is Vasanas all the way down. So the key thing about detachment is not that you don't have wants, it is that your wants do not control you. Membership grants you access to monthly streams, as well as a back catalog of a year's worth of content, in addition to quests and so much more. If you're interested, you can sign up for $10 a month at HealthyGamerGG/memberships, or click the link in the description below. Hope to see you there. And so even if you say, like, if you rebel against that, right? And that's what really like kind of got me interested in this video, was just the way that we as a society are saying, this is a group of people that we will cheer leaving behind. Even the men, don't help them, let them die out. So these people are special in this way. And I think that's actually what makes an incel, is that these are people, when I work with these people, the one common thread amongst all these people is they are the people who reach out for help, and society says you don't deserve it by virtue of the way that you speak, by virtue of the way that you act. And I'm not in any way advocating if you shoot up a school, I think you should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law and pay for your crime. I don't think that that is a good idea. I'm not advocating for that behavior. But the other thing that really worries me about this is even if you say, okay, these people are screwed, we don't like them, even if you accept that these people are fundamentally different and they don't deserve help, we should just let them die. My question is, when do they lose the capacity for help? At what point? If you're 18 years old and a virgin, do you deserve help at that point? What if you're 20 years old? What if you try to ask someone out on a date, but you don't know how to socialize? Your social skills are developmentally stunted. Is that the point that you lose the capacity for help? When does someone cross the line to no longer deserving help and we should let them die? So this is something that really worries me about like this whole dating and mating crisis and a lot of men being left behind, because there's one group of people that we say, hey, you don't deserve help. We're going to leave you behind. And I think that in and of itself, that reaction is what is breeding the incels. If you read these manifestos, look at these manifestos, these are people who were looking for one person to show them kindness. Oftentimes that's really what it is. It's a single human being to try to help them. And they don't get it. And then they get pushed to the end of, shunted to the side of society. They get ostracized. And then if society doesn't give a fuck about you, what do you expect that person to do in relation to society? Are they going to be supportive to society? Are they going to be kind to society? Or are they going to have a reaction of like, hey, if y'all are going to screw me, like, fuck y'all, right? And I think this is a huge problem. So the one thing that I really disagree with is if you're a man or a woman, I don't care. I don't think these people should be left behind. I think just like any other class of people who faces something. If we're talking about minorities in prison, we don't say that's their fault. We say this is a systemic issue that affects a lot of these people. We should do something as a society to help these people. If we look at women who are victims of domestic violence, they're female-only homeless shelters. They're not male-only homeless shelters. I think that's totally fine because there's a subgroup of people who is predisposed to being victimized by another group of people, and for their safety, we as a society should step up and account for that. Right? So when we look at other classes of people who are struggling, if there's a class of people, it's a systems issue, not an individual issue. That's kind of, I don't know if that is like too self-evident or I need to explain that more, but does that kind of make sense? If there's a group of people who all behaves a particular way, that's a system issue, not an individual issue. And systems issues require systematic solutions. But our systematic response to this is leave them behind. And so if you're someone who's struggling with this, we are going to try to help you, right? I don't agree with that approach. I think that in the same way that we feel moralistic towards incels today, we used to feel moralistic towards criminals. We used to feel moralistic towards addicts. I think what we will discover, what we're already discovering, is that over the last decade, there's been a lot of research that shows that there is a developmental trajectory, their history of trauma and abuse for a lot of these people, that these people struggle in their lives, and that we should help them. That's the main thing that I disagree with. And here's how. So if you're someone who's in this situation, I think that unfortunately, society is not really there to help you. But that doesn't mean you're screwed, and that doesn't mean that you are destined to die out. Okay, so here's the big difference between Darwinian natural selection and humans. So if you're a finch on the Galapagos Islands and you lose access to your source of food, you as a finch can't really do much about that. But as a human being, you have cognition, you have some degree of free will, you have resources, you have therapists. There's a lot that you can actually do. So what should you do? There are two things that I would strongly recommend. The first is that you be careful about the trash diet of the internet. The content that you consume, take a look at what impact that has on you. When you spend 1,000 hours on 4chan, when you spend time on incel forums, what does that do for you? 1 week that you spend on an incel forum, what does that do? What is your internal emotional state? How does your life change? Oftentimes what people find is that these are places that are incredibly validating, but they are not going to move you forward in life. They're not actually going to fix your problems. They're just going to soothe your problems. And there's something very dangerous about these places, is that they tell you it's not your fault, which feels really good. And to a certain degree, it may not be your fault, but they almost always also say there's nothing you can do about it, that we should blame these other people, right? There are certain things that you're not responsible for, but when I notice like the dialogue in these kind of incel-oriented forums and things like that, people are not like offering solutions to improve, right? They're just basically saying, you're screwed, I'm screwed. It's an echo chamber of people who have been screwed on in life. And then the problem is that as we get developmentally better, those of us that break out of inceldom usually leave those places behind. So be really careful about your engagement in those spaces. The second thing that I strongly recommend is y'all check out a course that we have called Mind the Fundamentals. So this is something where, like, I don't know how else to say this, but if you want to conquer this problem, the main thing that you need to understand is that your mind is working against you. That you have problems with your ego, you have problems with your desire. It's not that the world is this way, because this is the other thing that you have to understand. What adapt or die means is that the circumstances that you live in this are the same, but there are some people who are able to break out of it, right? Some people who are able to heal, some people who are able to socialize, some people who develop social skills. And the second thing is to understand how you work, because the truth of the matter is that COVID changed a lot about the way that we relate to other human beings. The post-COVID world is socially so different. And some people, by virtue of the way that they were raised, or some amount of work, or some amount of self-reflection, they are able to adapt to a post-COVID world. And some of us haven't figured out how to do that. And this is where, for me, this was revolutionary. So the moment that turned my life around is when I went to India. So I was like failing out of college, struggled to date, like asked out a bunch of girls, like joined a fraternity, would get drunk and ask out girls. And like it really didn't work out. Went on a series of terrible dates, had I don't even know if you could call them relationships. I was just like an absolute complete loser. What turned things around for me is going to India. What turned things around for me is recognizing how I work as a person. What is my ego? Where do desires come from? What are the influences on my mind that shape my behaviors? I'm not saying it's fair. I'm not saying it's just. I'm not saying any of that stuff. What I'm saying is that if you are trying to get started on this, the strongest place that I would recommend that you start is something that we call Mind the Fundamentals. So we've summarized the most important principles, collected them into a course, but you can absolutely just watch stuff on our channel. And here's the crazy thing, is that it works. You can work on yourself, is improving and setting boundaries, is learning to balance activity with periods of rest, has built resilience through pain, suffering, and failure, knows if difficulty comes, he will do his best to go through it and grow from it, is now able to form and maintain deep relationships with a selected few, is getting better at listening to and protecting their inner child, is learning the value of silence and nonverbal communication, knows life will always have its ups and downs, is starting to believe he's enough as he is, hasn't got everything figured out, but is okay with it. These are the skills that we try to teach in our community, and we are not going to leave you behind. The challenges that we face today, the existing institutions that we have are not able to help us, right? Therapy seems insufficient because there's a certain amount of social rehabilitation which needs to happen. But who's taking responsibility for that? So I think that while I sort of agree with Eliza Schlesinger, and like I made a video about how I think this is natural selection, I think it's not hopeless, and I don't think you deserve to be left behind.